The world expected a devil. They expected a man with horns, a voice like grinding glass, and eyes that burned with the fires of 1,000 crimes. When Adolf Eichmann was dragged into a Jerusalem courtroom in 1961, the public leaned in, holding their breath, waiting for the manifestation of pure, cinematic evil. They wanted to look into the eyes of a monster so they could tell themselves, "I am nothing like him." But then, he sat down. He adjusted his thick, black-rimmed glasses. He wiped a slight sniffle from his nose with a handkerchief. He looked like a clerk, a mid-level manager, a man who spent his life worrying about filing systems, office politics, and train schedules. He didn't bark orders. He spoke in a soft, monotonous hum of bureaucracies. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. Hannah Arendt, a Jewish philosopher who had escaped the very regime Eichmann served, sat in that courtroom. She didn't see a monster. She saw something much worse. She saw a man who was ordinary, a man who had traded his soul for a promotion, a man who had become a biological robot, not out of a deep-seated hatred, but out of a total, terrifying inability to think. Arendt looked at this man, this architect of transport who organized the logistics of the Holocaust, and realized that he wasn't a psychopath. He wasn't even particularly anti-Semitic. He was just a good worker. He was a man who had replaced his conscience with a rule book. Welcome to Outer Enigma. Today we dive into the banality of evil and the terrifying reality that the most dangerous people in the world don't wear masks. They wear suits. They follow the rules. And they could be sitting right next to you. Eichmann didn't kill anyone with his own hands. He didn't have to. He was the logistics expert. His weapon wasn't a pistol, it was a fountain pen. Think about that. While millions were being marched toward their end, Eichmann was sitting in a dim office, obsessing over the efficiency of railway lines. He wasn't thinking about the screams or the smell of burning flesh. He was thinking about the output. He was thinking about the quota. He was worried that if a train was late, it would reflect poorly on his performance review. He turned murder into administration. In his mind, he wasn't a murderer, he was a problem solver. He used language to hide reality from himself. He didn't talk about killing, he talked about final solutions, evacuation, and special treatment. This is where the banality of evil begins. It's the moment a human being stops seeing other humans as lives with intrinsic value and starts seeing them as numbers on a spreadsheet. It's the erasures of the individual by the system. When we stop thinking, we stop feeling. And when we stop feeling, we can justify anything as long as the paperwork is in order. Eichmann's defense was the ultimate shield of the biological robot. I was just following orders. He claimed he was a law-abiding citizen. He said that to disobey would have been a crime. He had successfully outsourced his morality to the state. He didn't have to decide what was right or wrong. The system decided for him. But Arendt saw the lie. She realized that following orders isn't a defense, it's a confession. It's a confession that you have ceased to be a person and have become a component, a gear, a cog in a machine that feeds on blood. Many people heard Arendt's theory and were outraged. How can you call this evil banal? They asked. How can you call a mass murderer ordinary? They wanted to believe that the Nazis were a freak accident of history, a group of monsters that appeared out of nowhere. But the science proved her right. In 1961, the same year as the Eichmann trial, a psychologist at Yale named Stanley Milgram conducted a study that would shatter our illusions about human nature. He wanted to know, how far would a normal person go if an authority figure told them to hurt someone else? The setup was simple. A volunteer, the teacher, was told to give electric shocks to a learner in the other room whenever they got a question wrong. The shocks went from 15 volts to a lethal 450 volts. The learner wasn't actually being shocked. He was an actor, but the teacher didn't know that. As the shocks increased, the actor would scream. He would pound on the wall. He would beg the teacher to stop, crying out about his heart condition. When the teacher turned to the experimenter in the white lab coat and said, "I can't do this anymore," the experimenter would simply say, "The experiment requires that you continue." What happened? 65%, two-thirds of ordinary everyday people, teachers, mailmen, fathers, neighbors, went all the way to 450 volts. They sat there sweating, trembling, and stuttering with stress, but they kept flipping the switches. Why? Because a man in a lab coat told them it was their duty. They weren't sadists. They didn't want to hurt the man. Many were crying while they did it, but they had entered what Milgram called the agentic state. They no longer felt responsible for their own actions. They were merely the agents of someone else's will. This is the banality of evil in a petri dish. It shows that the capacity to do the unthinkable is built into the human hardware, waiting for the right authority to activate it. It shows that our society isn't protected by our goodness, but by our willingness to say no. Arendt's message was a warning for the future. For us. For you. She realized that the greatest evils in history aren't committed by sociopaths in the shadows. They're committed by normal people who refuse to be uncomfortable. People who would rather commit a crime against humanity than a crime against the social order. Think about the world we live in today. We are increasingly governed by systems that treat us as data points, algorithms that decide our value, corporations that view employees as human capital, bureaucracies that care more about the process than the person. We are pressured to fit in, to follow the script, to be useful to a machine that doesn't know our names. When you treat your life as a series of functions, when you accept that your only value is what you can produce for the machine, you are walking the same psychological path as the man in the glass cage. You are choosing to be a robot because it is easier than being a human being. Because being a human being is dangerous. It requires you to be responsible. It requires you to be an outlier. Eichmann's thoughtlessness was his escape from the burden of being human. If he didn't think, he didn't have to feel the weight of his choices. If he just followed the script, he was safe. But human beings have intrinsic value that no spreadsheet can capture. We are not biological robots designed to maximize efficiency for a leader, a regime, or a market. Our true power lies in our ability to break the script, to look at a lawful order and say, "This is immoral. I will not do it." The machine hates that. The machine can't calculate a man with a conscience, and that is why the machine tries to kill it, one administrative step at a time. Eichmann was hanged in 1962. His last words were cliches. He spoke about his loyalty and his duty. Even at the foot of the gallows, he couldn't find a single original thought. He died as he lived, as a recording playing back a script. But the banality of evil didn't die with him. It lives in every system where empathy is mocked as inefficiency. It lives in every regime that demands total loyalty over moral truth. It lives every time we stay silent because speaking up would be socially awkward or unprofessional. True morality isn't about following the law. It's about the silent dialogue you have with yourself. It's about looking in the mirror and knowing that you are more than a cog. If you lose the ability to think for yourself, you lose the ability to be free. A machine cannot feel. A robot cannot resist. Only a thinking human, standing alone against the pressure of the crowd, can stop the march of evil. Don't be a biological robot. Don't let the world turn you into a spreadsheet. Don't let them tell you that your value is something that can be measured by your obedience. Your value is the fact that you can think, you can feel, and you can choose to be human. Before it's too late, start thinking. If you believe that the individual is worth more than the system, then subscribe to Outer Enigma. Together, we can find the courage to see the world as it truly is. Until next time, stay human.